IVM.
Welcome to episode 66 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I'm your host this week from Cincinnati, Ohio, Ashwin. And for the first time, I think in a while, we've got all three of us on the show. So I have DJ in London, Varun in Singapore. It's been a bit of a whirlwind month with the World Cup, but we're all here. It's a bit of a strange feeling for me, to be honest, because we're recording this on Sunday, the 7th of July. And I think it's for the first time in about 6 weeks we have any day, and especially a weekend, without a game of cricket on. So I don't quite know what to do with myself. Guys, I'm not sure if you guys are feeling the same way. But essentially where we are now is the group stage of the World Cup has wrapped up. We're waiting for the semifinals. So what we're going to do for you today is we're going to have to spend the first half of the show talking about how we got here, previewing the semifinals, and just talking a little bit about our favorite moments, etc., from the group stages of the World Cup. And then we're going to move after the break. In the second half of the show, we have something really special lined up. So stay tuned. I'll explain at the end of this section what's happening, but it's going to be really exciting, some special discussion coming up for the second half of the show. So DJ and Varun, thanks for joining me. I'm going to start with doing a wrap up of the two India games that happened since we were last with you. So if you heard episode 65, we were really fortunate to have two exceptional guests on. We had Roshan Alam joining us to do a preview of India versus Bangladesh, who Varun spoke to. And then we had Andrew Fidel Fernando join us to do a preview of India versus Sri Lanka. So if you haven't heard episode 65, go back and give that a listen. But Varun, let me start with you. You spoke to Roshan before the game. Do you want to quickly wrap up for us how India-Bangladesh went down and what took place in that match?
Yeah, I'll get to that. But Ashwin, you raised an important point. I think this is the first day without any cricket. And if my math serves me correctly, since the 19th of March between IPL and the league stages of the World Cup, I think there have been almost 100 games, if I'm not mistaken, that we have watched over 4 months. So let that
That's
sink
pretty
in.
good. I think what would we have? We would have had 56 IPL games and
about 45
World Cup matches. So you're right. Your math is pretty good. Better than DJ's at least, I think.
Yeah, not bad.
Always.
So we had a great podcast last week. We spoke to Roshan. I think we had said it's going to be a cracker of a game. We were expecting some fire from both sides, given all the history and rivalry. But I think it was a really good game. So India won the toss. They decided to bat. They came out with a little bit of a different team, and I'm sure we'll get into that later. But I think after the thrashing against England that we took, India made it very clear that we're trying to go in with a slightly more batting focused team. And so the team actually that played was that Dinesh Karthik came in. And for the first time, I think we had Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Mohammad Shami and Bumrah all playing. So India stuck to the 5-bowler strategy, but slotted in Dinesh Karthik for that extra batsman. As it's become almost regulation, Rohit Sharma went out, made a century. Rahul made about 77 at a decent strike rate of about 83 or so. Kohli didn't really fire. Pant actually hit 48 or 41 and was looking pretty good. I think got out at the wrong time. Hardik Pandya didn't click. But overall, India managed 314 for 9 in 50 overs, which, to be honest, we found out just yesterday that I think only one team before yesterday's games had actually chased a 250-plus score in the World Cup so far, and that happened to be Bangladesh. So you can't take them lightly. They had chased the 320-odd in just 41.3 overs. And so Bangladesh, when they came out, they've got a strong opening lineup. They've got Tamim, Soumya Sarkar, Shakib again hit 66. He's just on a roll. But somewhere down the line, I think the 315 was just a total that was a little bit too far for them. They had Saifuddin come in and hit 51. But I think Hardik Pandya is the one I wanted to call out from a bowling perspective. He bowled 10 overs, gave 60 for 3 wickets. And of course, Bumrah, who's just like amazing right now. He finished off the game with those 2 Yorkers. But I think special call out from my side for Bangladesh as a team. I think what was amazing is their determination, and they didn't give up right to the end. I mean, even in the last couple of overs, you saw them hitting the boundaries. So overall, I think good result for Bangladesh in the World Cup, but as expected, India won the game.
Yeah, thanks, Varun. Great summary. And so as we wrapped that up, India moved on to play Sri Lanka in a sort of must-win game in order to secure the position we wanted in the top 4. And we'll talk more about that. But DJ, let me ask you really quickly before I ask you to talk about Sri Lanka. Do these numbers sound familiar? 8 innings, 647 runs at an average of 92.43, strike rate of 98.7 with 5 centuries. Have you any idea who I'm talking about, DJ?
There's only one guy who's got 5 centuries in a World Cup, right? It's Rohit Sharma.
It's no hit or Roshit or any of those names coming to you now?
So, Ashwin, I'm going to stop you there, man. This has gone on long enough, right? So I've actually played back the bit of the podcast where I've said he's a one-day great, but he can't play test matches. I've sent you the link to the blog that I wrote about him as well, saying he's a one-day great, but if we could only get him to play like he plays when he's wearing the blue jersey for either the Mumbai Indians or for India in test matches. My frustration with Rohit has always been in test matches, right? I've always maintained he's a one-day great. And listen, man, I'm telling you, I haven't even picked him in my fantasy team because the one time I picked him, he got 1 run. And so every time I haven't picked him, he's been getting 100 after 100 after 100. He's got 3 consecutive hundreds now. So for the good of the Indian cricket team, I'm going to not continue to pick him in my fantasy cricket team.
Fair enough. That's good for me too. I think I finally caught up to you after a pretty abysmal performance in midway.
So are you now 8th or 9th? Because I'm somewhere around that.
I know I'm ahead of Varun by quite a significant margin, and that's a good enough one for me this year. Okay, so obviously I'm making fun of DJ because I will continue to troll you when he does well in ODIs. But fun facts about Rohit Sharma: he has now got 27, I think it is, 27 ODI centuries, tied for 5th place behind 4 legends of the game, arguably, Sachin, Kohli, Ponting, and Jayasuriya. He's 1 century away from catching Sanat Jayasuriya, and the way he's going, he might do that this World Cup. He's got 5 World Cup centuries, the most ever, overtaking Sangakkara, who had 4 back-to-back centuries. And so just having an absolutely stellar run. So, DJ, good opportunity for me to take you into the Sri Lanka game. So going into the Sri Lanka game, it was a super Saturday. India played Sri Lanka and South Africa played Australia at the same time. Essentially, the permutations were pretty simple. For India to be in first place at the end of the group stage, India needed to win and hope South Africa won. If India lost, then India was going to end up second. If India won, but Australia beat South Africa, India was going to end up second. So by the time you're listening to this, you know how it ended. But DJ, do you want to give us a quick rundown of the Sri Lanka game?
Yeah, I mean, there was context to this game, right? And as you said, there was a chance that India would finish first and play arguably what would be an easier semi-final, although we've gone and said that there's no easy semi-final in this kind of World Cup, right? So Sri Lanka won the toss and they batted first. And they started off slowly. Bumrah bowled really nicely. The standout innings from them, again, came from the old warhorse Angelo Matthews, who got 113. Kind of a similar innings to the one that he played against England. He got 85 in that innings. And it was quite nice to see Angelo get a third one-day international 100. Thiramane hung around with him, got 53. And they set India what I thought was quite a challenging target, 264, to chase in their 50 overs. As it turned out, one of my favorite moments of the game was when Jadeja was bowling. Jadeja was drafted in to play this game because Shami was rested and Kuldeep was brought in instead of Chahal. So Jadeja bowling and Sanjay Manjrekar was on commentary. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more later in the show. But I thought that was fantastic. Jadeja incidentally did really well. He bowled his 10 overs for just 40 runs and took a wicket, a nice little stumping. So, and then India got on to their chase, right? And we batted very, very well. KL Rahul batted like he'd never been out of form or had any trouble. He got 111. Rohit, as you said, got his 5th one-day international 100 in this World Cup. Sorry, 5th World Cup 100 this World Cup, which, I mean, it's just an incredible stat. And what I've actually enjoyed about Rohit is his press conferences, where I don't know whether he's pretending not to know about the records and stuff, but he seems to be very focused on the job at hand. And so I've actually enjoyed India's actually sending him out for the press conferences and him dealing with the media. He seems to have quite an interesting way of dealing with the media, quite like the MS Dhoni style of kind of offhand comments and having a bit of fun at the expense of the media. Unlike Kohli, who's much more intense, right? So anyway, Rohit got 103. Again, getting out just after getting to his 100, which was, I mean, a little bit weird for Rohit fans who are used to seeing him kind of finish the innings really well. And Kohli was there at the end, not out on 34, and Pandya came in. My slight disappointment was with the way Rishabh Pant got out. It was quite unnecessary. I thought he could have just finished the game off. But I mean, we'll discuss this later, I'm sure, when we talk about where Pant should bat and whether he should be in the 11. So yeah, great win for India. And it actually set up what happened later, which once Australia actually lost to South Africa, which most people weren't expecting to happen, India ended up topping the group stage, ending up right on top of the table. And then that meant that they would play the 4th place team, being New Zealand. and Australia would play England in the second semi-final.
Yeah, thanks, DJ. We're going to preview the semi-finals a little bit later in the show. But Varun, let me come to you, ask you a quick question, because you mentioned Jasprit Bumrah and the 2 Yorkers he bowled against Bangladesh. In the Sri Lanka game, he ended with figures of 3 for 37 with 2 maidens as well. I mean, aside from just asking you how good this guy is and how critical he is to the setup, he's not at the top of the wickets tally. He's tied for third. He's 9 wickets behind Mitchell Starc, 3 wickets behind Mustafizur. He's ended his 8th game with 17 wickets. And there are multiple others at 17. Shaheen Shah Afridi has 16. Amir and Archer both have 17. So the numbers may not always reflect it. But how have you seen Bumrah's role this World Cup for India?
I think he's Mr. Dependable. I actually think he's the most valued player in the Indian squad of 15 that has gone to England. And I think anytime there's any doubt, the ball is just thrown to him and he delivers. So I think it is a little bit of a case of, as bowlers get better, people look to just play them out and not score too many of them. And so that's why you see that a lot of people around him are taking the wickets. But still, I think 17 wickets so far is fantastic. I think when you hear him speak post the matches, he definitely comes across as somebody who just wants to continue play. He's humble. He said this is just his first World Cup. He doesn't want any rest games. And I think it was interesting. Yesterday, Jayawardene was commentating, and as a coach of the Mumbai Indians, he said that Bumrah is very quiet, but he's intellectual. And I think the other person with Jayawardene said, so he's a bowler with brains. And I think that kind of just summarizes what Bumrah has been.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary. And hopefully he continues to go on and do great things for India in the in the knockout stages of this World Cup. Speaking of the knockout stages, let's talk a little bit about India's squad. And I know this is the never-ending discussion. It feels like we've been talking about the number 4 slot forever, for 2 years, and I'm honestly not 100% sure we've resolved it. So, Varun, let me quickly ask you first before I go back to DJ. KL Rahul has been in fairly good form. He finally got that century that we all wanted him to get, his second ODI century. What happens when Shikhar Dhawan comes back into the ODI setup? Does KL Rahul get bounced back to number 4? Is he kind of the future of ODI batting? Because arguably Dhawan and Rohit have at least a few good years ahead of them still.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to break up that combination. So I think Dhawan walks back into the opening slot. I think Rahul has made a case for him to definitely bat. He's taken on a different role as opener, I would say, to bat a little more slowly. And I think that is very crucial because if you look at India's game, and I was reading a stat, I think India's got the maximum number of dot balls being played out when you look at us versus other teams. And we've still won majority of the game. So I think Rahul is tailoring his game to kind of just make sure that he's there, he's batting, he's got the talent and the skill. But it is a little slow. However, when you look at the rest of the Indian batting lineup, I think it's absolutely crucial that we play out the 50 overs, whether you're batting first or chasing. And so that's why I think Rahul is delivering. He's definitely got a future in the ODI side, possibly at number 4. But I think he's batted very well, actually.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a good summary. I think it's interesting that he's probably now a much more of a shoo-in into the test side, but I'm personally really pleased to see him perform in the ODI setup because, he's still young, he's got a long future ahead of him, and I just love watching him bat because when some of his strokes come off correctly, they're just absolutely stunning to watch. So let's go back to DJ, something you mentioned. You talked a little bit about the role of Jadeja in the squad. I think India has now played more players in the World Cup than anybody else, which if you really think about it, that's pretty classic Kohli and Shastri, right? They've been chopping and changing for the last 3 years. They're constantly rotating through the side. Shankar played quite a few games and then has disappeared off the radar. Pant got flown in. Now Mayank Agarwal has recently joined the squad. But I want to first ask you about Jadeja. And you mentioned the Jadeja-Sanjay Manjrekar Twitter feud. And just quickly to summarize for our listeners what happened. Manjrekar was, in his role as a commentator, talking about how he would not select Jadeja. And specifically, he used this phrase, quote unquote, bits and pieces cricketer. And he basically said, I don't want a Jadeja in my side. I would go with more specialist batsmen, specialist bowlers. Jadeja may give you a few overs, may make you a few runs, but he's a bits and pieces cricketer, so I wouldn't select him. Of course, as DJ mentioned, he then got selected. Kohli at the toss had to tell Manjrekar that Jadeja was in. Manjrekar was commentating with, I think it was Sangakkara, as soon as Jadeja came on the bowl, and Jadeja got a wicket in his first over. And it's very interesting to see Manjrekar try to defend himself and say, oh, but he's got a worse average than Kuldeep and Chahal, etc. The truth is, he's a maverick in the field. He's got this knack for picking up wickets, but also keeps one end really tight. He's got a better economy rate than both Kuldeep and Chahal. And there's no doubt that he's a deserving cricketer. DJ, do you see him in the setup for the semifinals?
So, really good question. Now, I know you're a big Ravindra Jadeja fan, and we've been discussing offline as well. I mean, with Kedar out of the equation, right, and India looking to kind of bolster its batting lineup while having a bowling option. I mean, Jaddu's a genuine bowling option. When Sanjay Manjrekar says he's a bits and pieces cricket, I mean, this is a guy who was number one in the Test rankings for quite a while, right? I mean, he's not a bits and pieces cricketer. He's got 300, admittedly on flat batting tracks, but he's got 300 runs twice in the first class game, and
Three times
he can
actually.
hold a
He's
bat.
got
He's
three
got a
triple
test match, right?
centuries.
Has he got three times? Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. So I mean, he can definitely hold a bat. He's a proper batsman. He's an incredible fielder, a gun fielder. I mean, that catch that he took to dismiss Jason Roy, right? It kind of changed the game and brought India back into the game while we were getting thrashed all over the park. So for Sanjay Manjrekar to call him a bits and pieces cricketer, I mean, I think it's a bit unfair, right? That said, Jadeja reacting like that on Twitter, I think it's a bit of a weird precedent because you don't expect to see cricketers take it that personally and kind of get back and hit back at commentators for their comments, because I mean there's it leaves commentators in a position where they're going to start kind of double guessing what they're saying and really having to watch their tongue when they're criticizing a player, for example. And I'm not sure that's the best precedent to set. I know Kieran Pollard has said the same thing about Sanjay Manjrekar previously, saying verbal diarrhea and this and that. And Rohit Sharma used to sometimes respond to stuff on Twitter as well. But I think as international cricketers, they probably need to rise a little bit above criticism from commentators. I mean, they've just got to ignore it. It's noise outside, I think. I mean, it's like us criticizing a cricketer and him just using his 2.3 million following to take a pot shot at us.
Yeah, I think Manjrekar
it's
would
a
like
bit
to
weird.
think he's a little bit bigger than Edges and Sledges, but I appreciate you putting us in that bracket.
Well, we're roughly in the same bracket.
But Varun, let me ask your thoughts on this one really quickly. Do you think Jadeja was wrong to speak out? Do you think it was deserved? I know none of us are huge fans of Manjrekar on this show either, as it seems to be the case for most of the world. But do you think Jadeja was in the wrong or the right?
No, I think I agree with DJ. It was very odd for Jadeja to come out and say something like that on Twitter in the middle of a World Cup when he hasn't played a game. And but I do have to say this. I think what's happening with social media is things are getting a bit out of hand. Like I almost feel, and you guys might disagree with me, but I almost feel that Jadeja posted that knowing that he's going to get support from so many Indian fans because so many people have trolled Manjrekar before and used this verbal diarrhea. It was almost like it was a perfect setup for him knowing that he's going to get all this support. So I actually didn't appreciate that. I think one shouldn't, especially in the middle of a tournament, be replying to a commentator's comments.
Yeah, fair enough.
Do you think Kohli knew that he's going to tweet about this? I mean, do you think he kind of got team permission to say that? I don't know. What do you think Kohli thinks about this in the middle of a World Cup and is distracting from like stuff happening, right? And then he gets asked the next day, who's in your playing 11? And he tells Sanjay Manjrekar, well, Jadeja's playing.
I think Kohli's only issue with it would have been that he didn't say Manjrekar was Rogan and Manjrekar wears Puma shoes and uses whatever brand of deodorant, etc. That's Kohli's only concern with social media.
Fog deodorant with a double G. It's interesting. I think team management probably doesn't know sometimes, and I think that's the scary part of social media, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually, I imagine we'll get to a point where there's social media rules or there's some sort of embargo during World Cups, etc. But anyway, enough of the kind of gossip discussion. Varun, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I do want to just ask both of you, and I promise you this is not a taunt, but suddenly overnight, where has Kedar gone? Like DJ also mentioned that now that Kedar is out of the tournament, is it just taken for granted that he's not playing? And what has happened? Because his average hasn't changed. He's hit a 50. What suddenly happened? Has the world suddenly woken up and listened to all of our podcasts where I've been saying this, or are people just seeing something different now?
Look, it's an interesting segue, and we are going to talk a lot about the combination, and I do want to talk about it. But if you listen to somebody like a Saurav Ganguly during the games, he asks the same question. He's not really sure what happened, and the truth is, it still remains that Kedar is the only guy we have in the squad who can bat in the top six and give you a few overs. Now, there's two different ways this can go, and DJ, I'll let you jump in before I go into a more detailed squad analysis, but you can either play 5 bowlers and 5 bowlers only, and in that case, in case of injury, Rohit or Kohli or somebody will have to just turn their arm around. Or if you want to play that 6th bowling option, it becomes a question of, is your middle order too weak without a Kedar? Can you rely on Pandya and Jadeja as kind of number 6 and 7? Anyway, a lot of good discussion there. DJ, I'll let you answer the direct question before we get into more squad specifics.
And I think the answer, and we'll come to it as you say later in the show, I think the answer is that injuries have changed a lot of plans, right? Shikhar's injured, Shankar's injured, and that's caused a rejig of the thinking in the team management. I don't think Kedar has done anything particularly wrong, but with the injuries and players that have been flown in for as replacements, like Pant doesn't bowl, right? So you've got to figure out how to balance the bowling with the batting and someone who can give you runs in the middle order. So I think if there weren't any injuries, India would probably still be playing the 11 that they put out against South Africa for the first game on the 5th of June, to be honest.
So interesting points of view. You can tell even here at Edges and Sledges, we don't all always agree on the squads. But with that, let's do a little bit of a deeper dive of the squad. Because again, it's been all over the place, but I specifically kind of want to look from the lens of where do we think we're going to go for the semifinals as an Indian playing 11. So let me summarize where we are today. As I see it, you sort of have 5 spots in the team that are guaranteed. You have your top 3 as Rahul, Rohit, and Kohli. You have somewhere in the middle order MS Dhoni. You have somewhere in the middle order Hardik Pandya. And of course, you have Bumrah. I'm sorry, that's 6 slots. So 6 slots are guaranteed. Rahul, Rohit, Kohli, Dhoni, Pandya, and Bumrah. Okay, where there's some variability is there's 2 middle order slots where you could slot in Pant, Karthik, or Kedar. There's 3 spinner slots potentially, 3 spinners vying for contention, Kuldeep, Chahal, or Jadeja, and then there's the 2 quicks, Shami and Bhuvi. So Varun, let me put you on the spot really quickly. What is your 11 going into a semi-final against New Zealand, whose openers have arguably struggled, but probably have the best 3 and 4 in the world, at Manchester?
So I have my playing 11, and I'm fairly certain this is how the team is thinking based on what I've seen. I think it's going to be Rohit and Rahul at the top, Kohli 1 down, Pant to follow at 4, Dhoni followed by Dinesh Karthik. And I say that because I think India's batting has been a slight concern. I think New Zealand or even England and Australia are the 3 teams who could get us out for a quick 2 or 3 wickets early on. And I think that's why Dinesh Karthik will play. I think we'll then go with 5 bowlers, and I'm going to say Pandya, Jadeja, Chahal, Shami, and Bumrah. So these 5 bowlers, and that's my playing 11. And I think maybe India goes in with one tweak on this, but the way they've been playing the last couple of games, this is how I see the lineup.
So just to recap to that, basically in the bowling attack, no Bhuvi, no Kuldeep. DJ, do you agree with that assessment?
So I think that if we play Jadeja, we won't be playing another spinner. I think we're going to go with Shami, Bhuvi, and Bumrah as the 3 pacers that we're going to rely on. Jaddu will be the spinner and Pandya will be the 5th bowler. So Kulcha, who we thought was the massive plus for us, because of the nature of the pitches that have been quite bowler friendly, they haven't really been spin friendly. No spinner has actually really dominated in this World Cup, which is a bit of a surprise, I feel. I think we're going to go with Jadeja, who gives you those quick overs. He runs through his overs, and that helps with playing 3 seamers, right? So Jadeja with 4 seamers, actually, including Pandya, is a nice combination to keep the game moving along quickly. And the batsman would be Rahul, Rohit, VK. I think Dinesh Karthik should bat at 4 instead of Pant. I think we've made a little bit of a mistake batting Pant at 4. He isn't as experienced as DK. I keep saying this again and again. When we won the Champions Trophy in 2013, DK was the guy batting at number 4 for us. Right? DK needs to move up to number 4. Dhoni, Pandya, and Pant. Pant can come in and provide that hitting at the end. I mean, he's been a disappointment for me at number 4 because we haven't batted him in the right place. We're not going to bat him up the order, as I've been trying to advocate for, because Rahul and Rohit are doing so well. But he shouldn't be batting at 4 because he just doesn't have that experience. Yes, if we get off to a great start, fine, bat him at 4 and he can kind of tee off along with Pandya. But if we are not getting off to a great start, keep him for the back overs and let him move on and get on with the innings towards the end.
Okay, so a lot to unpack here. You heard 2 very different combinations from Varun and DJ. Varun thinks we're going to go Bumrah and Shami as the 2 quicks, with Jadeja and Chahal as 2 spin options. DJ thinks we're going to leave out Chahal in favor of Bhuvi, so 3 quicks and 1 spin option with no wrist spin option. I think, interestingly, I'm somewhere in between. So you're going to hear 3 different squad predictions from Edges and Sledges. I am in agreement with Varun's bowling. So I think we'll play Chahal and Jadeja as the two spinners. I think we'll play Shami and Bumrah as the two quicks and Pandya as number 5. I also think our batting order is going to be Rahul, Rohit, Kohli. I think they're going to persist with Pant at 4 and Dhoni at 5. But I have a feeling at the last minute, the number 6 slot is going to go back from Karthik to Kedar. And I think that's because Manchester has done okay for spin at some points in the past. I think they're going to make a game day call with the pitch. But I know New Zealand has struggled against spin historically, other than Williamson and Taylor. So my gut tells me they're going to play Varun squad basically, but with Kedar in at 6 instead of Karthik.
But it's incredible, isn't it? We've been talking about this for the best part of a year, and we're into a knockout semi-final, and we still don't know what the best 11 is going to be. Yes, there have been injuries and stuff.
That's what I was saying, though, is that's the perfect summary of India in the last 5 years, is that we're in the semi-finals, having topped the table, and we still don't know our perfect 11. But that's pretty much who the team is. So enough about the squad. We have a few more minutes before we go to the second half of our show. I want to start by asking you, we talked about it, 45 games, lots of discussion, 1992 World Cup format coming back. Each team played each other. There were rain issues. There was concern at one point that 11 games would be a dead rubber. Varun, let me start with you. A quick summary of how you felt about the World Cup 2019. Do you think we'll look back on this group stage and say it was okay, or that was one of the better ones? And then share with me kind of your favorite and least favorite moments from the group stages.
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to say is I think the World Cup did open up. It started off a little bit slow, and I did get the sense that it's probably not going to be the most exciting World Cup. But with those couple of England defeats, I think the entire table opened up. And yeah, I personally think it was a great World Cup from my perspective. We'll definitely look back and think that there were matches where it was close. But I think at the start of the World Cup, the three of us had predicted these are the 4 teams that are going to be in. Pakistan and West Indies might have an outside chance to get in. But the way this format is, it allows for consistency. It rewards consistency. And I think that's why the top 4 teams have come in. My favorite, I would say, memory has to be Rohit. I mean, I think I just have to say Rohit's 5 centuries. And the worst memory, I would say, is probably the England game. Very India-centric, but I think that really hit us very hard.
Yeah, I think good summary. DJ, let me throw the same question to you. How are you feeling overall? And then your favorite memory and least favorite.
So I think the ICC have got very lucky with this World Cup, if I'm completely honest, because it could have gone very, very wrong. The group stages went very slowly. They went very much to template. There was rain in the middle, so people lost games in the middle. At least all teams lost games equally almost, which was fine. But I just didn't feel the same kind of excitement that the Super 6 or the Super 8 format had, where every group game had a context where if you won against a team that qualified, you carried those points into the next round. So I actually felt that the 2003 format was better. Even the quarterfinals that we played in the last format were better because you had more kind of context to every game. The ICC, as I said, got lucky with this one because England decided to lose some games which they shouldn't have lost. So that opened out the World Cup quite a bit, and there were some rained-off games. So that also contributed towards a little bit of interest towards the end of the tournament to work out who was going to play whom in the semi-finals. But then there was also all that chat about the net run rate versus head-to-head, and I mean, none of that happens if you've got a group stage which is quite clear with head-to-head. You're not playing those many games against different teams. So you can quite clearly say, we've beaten them and we're going to go ahead. If you've got 3 teams tied, that's when you use the net run rate. But there's been a lot of chat about that because Pakistan have gone out because of net run rate and all of that stuff. So I think the ICC have got lucky with this format. I think the format will need to take another look at itself. And I don't know whether we're going to play the same format in 2023. Who knows? My favorite moment, I think, as Varun says, I'm going to go with India's bowling performances throughout the tournament. I mean, the sound of boom, boom, boomrah, right? Like I went for 4 games and I have never seen the crowd get behind India's bowlers like that before. And we've got a bowling attack to do that. And it's just been incredible. Earlier when you went to games, there was we want 4, we want 6. Now it's all about boom, boom, boomrah, shami, shami. And it's just, I mean, as I said on Twitter, I think it just sends a shudder down every 90s Indian cricket fan when you see that Bumrah Yorker spearing into the middle stump against Bangladesh towards the end. You're like, this is the guy we were praying for in the 90s. We've got him 20 years later. We need to wrap him in cotton wool and preserve him because, my God, this guy is a bowler and a half. right? So incredible bowling performances. For that's the highlight for me, India's bowling. The disappointment for me has been South Africa, a team that was set to do great things. I mean, you had some real interesting players. Rabada was doing so well in the IPL. You had Faf du Plessis, de Kock, Imran Tahir, who's just retired from cricket, JP Duminy, who's also retired from World Cup cricket. I mean, incredible team, just didn't show up to the World Cup, and similar with the West Indies. So I think those were my two big disappointments with this World Cup.
Thanks, guys. Lots of great memories, lots that we will look back on, hopefully for a long time if the end result goes as we want. Let me just quickly share my two. So my favorite moment from the World Cup was actually the India-South Africa game. So I wasn't at it, but the India-Australia game. I was at the South Africa game. I was talking about the India-Australia game. My favorite moment, I mean, India batting, putting on 352 against a formidable bowling lineup, including Mitchell Starc, who went for his worst figures of the tournament. And then something about that, kind of what DJ said, the bowling performance, where they were 200 odd for 2 with 15 overs left. And then Bhuvi and Bumrah came to the party. Each of them took 3 wickets, some fantastic fielding, good catching. To me, that was the epitome of this. I think there's just something about India beating Australia that's a highlight for me and always will be in a World Cup. And of course, the downside for me is something we talked about a lot about on the show before, is India-New Zealand group game getting rained out. We drove all the way to Nottingham. We were standing around. The crowd was getting behind it. And unfortunately, one of the potential crackers of the tournament got rained out. So overall, pretty happy with the World Cup. Really can't complain. I do want to wrap up our segment just to know what you guys think will happen in the next 3 games we have coming up. So again, we have India-New Zealand on Tuesday, 1st versus 4th. We have England-Australia on Thursday, what some are calling a preview of the Ashes. And then the winners meet next Sunday in the finals. So Varun, let me ask you first.
India is going to beat New Zealand. England is going to beat Australia. You're going to have India versus England at Lords, and India is going to win.
DJ?
I think that's a fairly simplistic way of looking at things, but it's a tough call, man. I mean, India-New Zealand it's a game we haven't played this time. We lost to them in the warm-up, although we beat them back home in 4-1 when we were in New Zealand. I do hope India make it through that unscathed. In England-Australia, frankly, I'm really glad they're playing each other in the semi-finals and we're not playing either of them. So good for us as Indian fans. I suspect Australia will come through that just because of their superior pressure on that. So we're going to see an India-Australia final, and India is going to avenge 2003, and all those demons that we've had since 2003 will be put to rest at Lord's next Sunday.
Awesome. So my prediction is the same as DJ's. I think India is going to take down New Zealand. Australia is going to take down England. England will just crumble, and India-Australia final. And obviously, I'm going to predict that India is going to win. So that wraps up.
And the trophy will be presented to India by Zahir Khan
at Lord's
after his first over in 2003.
All right, guys, that wraps up this segment of the show. Thank you. Good discussion. I was happy to get back to all three of us just chatting about the game after quite a while. So just to quickly explain to you what's going to happen after the break, we have partnered with, I believe it's 8 now different cricket podcasts to pull together what we think is the world's biggest cricket podcast collaboration. It might be the world's biggest podcast collaboration. Who knows? Unless somebody tells us otherwise, maybe let's call it that. But we have Manners from Australia, All About the Balls from England, the Cricketeers from New Zealand, Taz who's representing Pakistan, and then Mash, who's been on our show before, representing West Indies, among others, joining us. So stay tuned. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back for the second half of this show with the world's biggest cricket podcast collaboration.
We're calling it the Megapod.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. One more reminder, we are still hiring. We're looking for producers, content creators, audio engineers, developers, and basically all kinds of people. Go onto our careers page, ivmpodcast.com/careers, and apply. Please send us your resume and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Also wanted to make a note to you all that, hey, if you are listening to us and you hear something you like, take a screenshot of what you're doing, send it to us on social media, tag us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever, and we'll repost you on our own page. This week, your favorite fitness podcaster, Urmi Kothari, is back with Season 2 of the Kinetic Living podcast. Urmi is doing 2 bite-sized episodes every week, Tabata Tuesdays, which will be a 4-minute workout, and a second called Thriving Thursdays, where Urmi will share motivating personal experiences or challenges she's faced. On Cyrus Says, actor and improviser Mukul Chadda talks to Cyrus about his central role in the Indian adaptation of The Office, the process of adapting the scripts, and how he went from being a research analyst in New York to an actor and improviser in Mumbai. On the first episode of Tech Careers in the New, presented by Accenture, Sheila Ditya is in conversation with Sanjeev Narsipur. He's the managing director and blockchain lead at Accenture Technology Services, and they talk about blockchain, its real-world practical applications, and what it takes to have a career in this space. On IVM Likes, IVM staffers delve deeper into the universe of independent and parallel cinema. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks about never missing Mondays. He also talks about maintaining the momentum and owning that habit. On ATKT Talent 10, P-Man and Krupa are joined by Sai, a rapper, and Kala, a music producer and rapper. They talk about their ATKT journey, the first songs they composed and produced together, and collaborations with other rappers. On Not Just Dansak, Parsin talks to Roxanne Bambot and Maruk Mogrelia about immersive Parsi food experiences like Parsi food walks and home dining. On What a Player, Siddharth, Mikhail and Akash review the previous week of the ongoing ICC Cricket World Cup, preview the upcoming week along with some unusual predictions, and give out their What a Player of the Week. On the Pragati podcast, Pranay Kotastane returns to help us understand how fiscal federalism works in India. And with that, let's continue on with your show.
Hello and welcome to what could be a world record. And if it isn't a world record, it is going to be very entertaining. It is the Megapod. This is Ollie here from All About the Balls podcast, and I am very proud and very excited to be hosting a Cricket World Cup podcast full of incredible talent, some of the best and worryingly free and available cricket podcasters who are available at this point. And they are going to be talking about a whole range of amazing, interesting topics. We're going to go now straight into the show and introduce them. So first of all, can I proudly introduce from Edges and Sledges, DJ and Ashwin. Guys, are you there?
We are here. This is Ashwin. Ollie, thanks for having us. Thanks for agreeing to host. This is a mammoth accomplishment. Hopefully, if we can get through the next little bit. So just quickly, we are Edges and Sledges. We're an Indian-themed cricket podcast hosted by three of us, Varun, Ashwin, and DJ. We're in three different parts of the world, Singapore, the UK, and the US. We get together once a week. We now have 65 episodes, 66th one releasing along with this one. And we're thrilled to be a part of the cricket podcast community.
Guys, thank you very much for joining. And without further ado, Makel, are you there too?
I am here indeed. Pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I write cricket, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And I guess I'd consider myself a sports writer and a cricket correspondent, particularly with regards to the failures of the West Indies cricket team.
You must have a lot to write about. And also, do we have Paul? Paul, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Paul Dennett in Australia, and I host the Big Smash Cricket podcast with Andrew Mansell, which has been on a long hiatus, and we've just started up again. So stay tuned for plenty of banter from Menners. And Menners, are you there?
Yeah, I am. G'day. I'm Menners. I'm in Sydney, about 2 kilometres from the Sydney Cricket Ground, to give you an idea of the geographical location. I'm the host of Cricket Unfiltered for News Corp and, of course, the Big Smash Cricket podcast with Paul. Great to be here.
We got podcast royalty here. This is pretty impressive. And also we have someone dialing in from New Zealand. Adam, are you there too?
I am. It's 8:30 here in New Zealand, and I'm still tired, so excuse my raspy voice right now, guys. It's great to be amongst so many great podcasters, and we all love cricket, obviously. So I'm based in Hamilton, New Zealand, and do the Cricketers.
You're not going to try and talk rugby again, are you, mate?
Oh, not yet. It's
good.
Too early in the year.
When I was on your podcast, that bit about the rugby just
I'm sure there'll be mention of the Crusaders at some point, without a doubt. But last and by no means least, my own brother from another mother, my co-host from All About the Balls, Gareth. Are you there, mate?
I am indeed. Ollie's co-host for my sins and for the good things. But we're a sports-based, All About the Balls podcast, but we both have a passion and love for the game of cricket. And we're based I'm based down in Sussex on the south coast of England. So really, really excited to be here, and absolutely fantastic if we can pull this off.
Yes, yeah. If we can just logistically make it towards the end of this actually will be a success. But guys, look, thank you very much indeed for introducing and joining us. Lots of stuff ahead. So just as a quick agenda for the listeners, so they know what excitement they've got coming their way, we're going to talk through each podcast, each person's favourite
moments from this World Cup. And we're also then going to talk a little bit about how each of their respective teams has been performing so far. Some happy thoughts there, and probably some very sad thoughts from some of the stars. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the semi-final predictions as well. We know that our final 4 teams are. And there's a couple of great games coming up this week, so it'd be good to get everyone's predictions for those. And then, of course, it wouldn't be right if getting all this cricketing brain power together, we didn't ask a few questions about how to make the game better and fix it. One thing I will be doing is I will be throwing quiz questions at you throughout the session just to keep you on your toes and allow you to show off your cricketing knowledge prowess. And without further ado, here comes the first question. So to your buzzer in true quiz format is your name. So whoever gets there first, please shout your name out. Here we go. Fingers on buzzers, if that makes any sense. Which 2 captains have won the Cricket World Cup twice?
Ricky Ponting.
Lloyd.
Oh, I think this is where hindsight shows me that this was a terrible, terrible idea. But I think that was Adam first. I think Adam got in there first.
Yeah.
Adam, what was your answer?
Ricky Ponting and Clive Lloyd.
Winner. Off to a great start there. So straight away, 1 point for Adam. All of these points mean absolutely nothing, but they will give you bragging rights later on Twitter. So it's worth going after. So into the actual pod discussion straight away. Guys, I'm going to call upon you one by one, and I want your best and worst moments from the World Cup so far, please. So, Mikhail, can we start with you? What's made you smile and made you cry so far this World Cup?
In that case, so best moment would be the West Indies opening victory against Pakistan, where I nearly allowed myself to believe that they might actually do well in the World Cup. And the worst moment, also, see the West Indies, was their bowling performance against Bangladesh, which was shockingly atrocious.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, look, speaking so as a West Indies specialist, how do you rate their World Cup? Has this been about par? Is this kind of what was expected, or have they actually overachieved or underachieved?
I mean, I think it's par. I think a lot of people allowed themselves to kind of be a bit romantic about the West Indies and believe they were going to do better than their actual capabilities. But came ninth. Now, you have to remember that Afghanistan and West Indies had to qualify to get to this World Cup. Afghanistan won the qualifiers. West Indies obviously were runners-up. So my argument is we came ninth and beat Afghanistan. So we've done par or done well.
Okay. And anyone else at all? Thoughts on the West Indies? Have they overachieved or disappointed you?
Adam here. I think the West Indies for me have underachieved a little bit. Obviously, people have seen my post saying that I thought West Indies would be the dark horse of the competition. I think we thought that looking at the series they played against England prior to the World Cup. But I think in the end of it, they just didn't have enough quality batsmen to fire. There was weaknesses in their bowlers. If you actually look at their batting lineup, they never really had that one batsman that went on and regularly got big scores. And I thought Shai Hope was a disappointment in this World Cup. He came into the World Cup with an average of around 50 in one-day cricket, and he really didn't fire a shot, did he? And their batting lineup really needs a couple of stabilising figures, and I think they just have a lot of T20 strikers in their lineup without anybody that's really just a calming figure, so like a Joe Root or a Kane Williamson or a Coley or someone that kind of ilk. So I think that they were lacking in areas, but it was great to think that they could make it. Unfortunately for them, they just weren't consistent enough.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on Shai Hope. He is a bit of a disappointment for the tournament. We had him down. We were chatting ahead of the tournament on one of our pods and saying that he was a bit of a dark horse of being an absolute star of the show, and he just never really fired a shot in anger.
No, he didn't. But in saying that, the West Indies have got a lot of young players. Like when you look at that top order, Hetmeyer, Hope, and Pooran, I mean, they're only, in their early to mid-20s. So, I mean, did we over-expect from the West Indies? You think like the Black Caps have got guys in their late 20s, early 30s with lots of experience. So does Australia. So does India. I think next World Cup, they could be a force, without a doubt.
It's Gareth here. Is there, Marshall, I'll be interested to get your thoughts quickly on it. Is there anyone that's coming through that's got that mould of being that stabilising, as you say, Williamson or Coley or Root? Because I think the teams are doing well. They've got that stability. Steve Smith for us, they've got the ability to really hold that innings together. Is there anyone that's coming through? Was it going to be one of these younger guys who's just going to mature, basically?
It's basically the latter. I think, like has already been said, Hope was expected to do it. And in fairness, he did get, 2 or 3 scores over 50 at his usual slow strike rate. I think they probably missed a trick in not playing Darren Bravo somewhere in the middle order to try and also bat slowly but through the innings. The reality is, though, if you're young in the Caribbean and you're making your way through cricket, the chances are you're going to make your money through 2020. So it's hard to say who's going to come through and be able to play that stabilizing role when 2020 is such a pull in the Caribbean. I think what you have to do then is look at the test team and see who from the test team can also play ODI cricket. And the only obvious person is Roston Chase. He's been given a couple of goals. He's not really shown yet that he's got the temperament for ODI cricket, but I suspect he'll probably get another go in the future because obviously he has test cricket capabilities.
Yeah. It's an interesting point you make there about players seeing their financial future, I guess, more in T20, and I can't really see that changing very much. Shifting from one team that disappointed to another team that I think really surprised people in terms of how they performed in this World Cup with South Africa. Gareth, I know as a South African man yourself, you had high hopes and have been. I've regularly found you crying in the corner after the way the Proteas have gone this tournament. What went wrong, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultimate reality is, I mean, I'm South African born, but lived in England for the last 16 years. So I've watched both teams in different ways, and watched different teams evolve in different ways. But the SA side, there's a lack of, obviously losing AB de Villiers, but we can't live on that forever. And I think people tend to keep sort of hanging their hat on that. But my biggest thing is there's just a lack of depth and players that step up when they need to. And I don't know if that's a mindset thing. Rabada against Australia yesterday was absolutely on fire, and how everyone expected him to perform the whole tournament. And he turns up in a dead rubber at the end for South Africa, a dead rubber. And I think that summed up the whole SA performance for me, really, in the whole World Cup.
At least they didn't choke.
Well, yeah. Can you choke on three games into the group stage? Can you choke? I think because they did it then. So, yeah. I mean, yeah. They choked on the start. They choked on the starters. Choke. So it was. I mean, yeah, it's bizarre. It was a bizarre World Cup. I'm going to be interested to see when they get back what the mood in SA is like around it. And Otis Gibson's position there, because I rate him as a coach, actually. But when there's lack of leadership, I've got to look at him and go, do they have a game plan, and did they know what they were doing?
Yeah, I mean, from a personal point of view, I was really excited when Du Plessis opened up, I think, with spin in the opening game, and it kind of worked quite nicely, tying England down. I thought
he got Johnny Bairstow really quick, didn't he?
Yeah. I thought this is quite an exciting angle, quite an interesting approach. This is boding well, but then it just went horribly wrong. Anyone else got some reassuring comments for Gareth about how this isn't terrible news for South African cricket?
They just choked earlier than normal, that's all.
Can't they do anything to stop that? To stop people players like Abbott and Morkel, and I think they've got 50 players currently playing in county cricket. The World Cricket needs to do something to stop all of these players leaving South Africa, surely.
Well, no, I've got no reassuring comments, but with all the players leaving South Africa to go and play in England, I mean, the future's not looking particularly rosy for South Africa. This could be Faf's last World Cup or his last game for South Africa. I mean, the future's uncertain. Obviously, Rabada's the one. If you've got him in your team, you're always a chance. But South Africa could be headed for a few years of pain, I think.
The problem is, I think it's actually even gone beyond a little bit around being a financial problem. I think obviously the money's big here comparably. I'm not saying that's not the main driver for most of these guys, but it's opportunity, and it's opportunity to get into a side where there's a game plan and a structure, and people are going to get the opportunities they want, and they're going to be able to go through that. And I think that's why some of them are leaving around that. and obviously without going on the whole other tangent of political things in terms of that, but I don't know how World Cricket can help there. There's just not enough money to keep them is the first and foremost the bigger problem, really.
What about if South Africa just said in World Cups we'll let them play?
Yeah, well, Ollie and I were talking about this last week, a few weeks ago with AB de Villiers, that obviously it emerged that he sent a message the night before going, actually, I've changed my mind, I'm available. I mean, I think you've just got to pick him. You've got to pick the best players that are available at any time.
Well, I mean, surely that's like the equivalent of a 3 a.m. booty call, right? That's what he's done. He's texted his best friend from school about wanting to get back into the South African league.
Look, we've all been there, and no one's judging. That's all I'm saying.
As everyone desperately racks their brains, going, "Can I tell that story about?" No, I probably shouldn't. I probably wouldn't. It's a very different problem. Actually, a quick question there though for everybody, because Gareth has mentioned there personally feels that AB de Villiers should have been let in because he's still a talent. What are other people's thoughts on that?
I think AB de Villiers should have been given a slot in the World Cup side. I mean, to be honest, like he's a great, like he's not just any other batsman, and he could have made a massive difference to their World Cup campaign. And I was actually talking to a mate the other day about it and saying, well, if he played the World Cup, how many games would South Africa have won? Extra games. I mean, easily 1 or 2. When you think,
you're right. He'll win you 2 matches at least.
Absolutely. The other thing with AB de Villiers, he's played over a decade for South Africa. He's given his blood, sweat, and tears to the nation. Surely they can make an exception to the rule in this case. It's not like he's a 22-year-old kid who's decided to play the T20 circuit and then decided, oh no, I don't want to play international cricket. And maybe he genuinely felt burnt out by the amount of cricket that he'd been playing and just wanted to enjoy himself for a few years. So I don't begrudge him on that.
So Adam, it's DJ here, and we discussed this on our pod as well, Ashwin and I and Varun as well. And I think the issue was that the board had reached out to him saying, we'll manage your workload so that you can play the next World Cup. And he just didn't fancy it. He'd say that he was burnt out, and then you'd see him going and playing the various leagues all over the world. I mean, he's a fantastic player. But, I mean, they're these guys who are putting in all the work behind the scenes. And yes, he's an amazing, amazing batsman. But you can't pick and choose your games, is what we felt. And I think the board, in our view, did the right thing, to be honest. Cricket South Africa.
Yeah, I have to agree, to be honest. If you look at I draw parallels with this situation with a lot of the West Indian players who have obviously all played IPL, and then you saw Gale and Russell come back. Now the difference is this: Chris Gale made himself available for the World Cup qualifiers prior to the World Cup. AB essentially has been on off for the last 3 years. I don't think you can come back at the last minute prior to World Cup just because you're the best player and say I'm available, guys. I think he'd made his bed, he had to lie in it. Whether it made South Africa weaker or not is irrelevant. He had been messing about with Cricket South Africa. And I think in any normal circumstances, you want your best players, but I think AB had taken the piss, to be honest.
Do you think it was one of those cases, though, with AB de Villiers where he didn't have any intention of playing the World Cup, it wasn't in his mind, and then, say 6 weeks out from the World Cup, he started thinking, okay, I actually want to be on the biggest stage. And it kind of hit him at that point that, okay, I'm not actually going to be going to the World Cup.
I mean, I think for me, the reality is, and I think, look, he's human. He's obviously clearly, thought, actually, I don't want to miss out here and I want to do it. The problem is none of us will know, well, maybe someone does, but the circumstances of how that 24 hours unfolded. Was it, like you said, a booty call, WhatsApp message to Faf going, mate, if you need me, I'm around. I've got my gear. Or was it?
Or just a couple of emojis.
Yeah.
Aubergine emoji, yeah.
World Cup.
Or was it the other side of it, that there was a conversation and they still went no, and then the press has done whatever was going to work. I don't know, and I don't know if any of you guys know. You seem a lot more in touch with the press side of things than me, so.
So thanks for all those thoughts. I think there's I don't know. It's a tough one. I think hindsight's 2020, but I bet they look back now as they are choosing the chicken or fish on the flight back home, thinking, bloody hell, we should have let AB play. So let's move on to one of the semi-finalists. But before we do that, we've got another star who we've just been able to link up to the podcast, Jonathan from the Wrong End podcast. Mate, can you hear us okay?
I can, yeah. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Great stuff. We'll come to you in a second to get your views on England, but give you a moment to prepare your in-depth research, and we'll jump to the lads from Edges and Sledges, DJ and Ashwin. India, how do you think it's going for them? Obviously, they made semi-finals and looking in good form, but is all well?
I mean, yeah, this is Ashwin. I'll jump in and say I think top of the table, can't complain. Manners, it was always nice ending one spot ahead of the Aussies, and worth noting it was only the one loss in the game against New Zealand that was rained out. So I think overall feeling really good. I think what the three of us talked about on Edges and Sledges separately is the fact that India's played 15, I think maybe 16 players now. The squad is chopped and changed over and over. We're 2 days from the semi-final at the time of recording this, and we still don't know what the 11 is going to be that takes the field against New Zealand. That's just sort of symptomatic of the Kohli Shastri regime that has dominated Indian cricket for the last 3 years. They are always chopping and changing. The entire country has been debating who's going to bat at 4. There's been players coming in and out of the squad, and granted, there have been a couple of injuries, but I think from a performance on-field standpoint, Rohit Sharma, Jasprit Bumrah have just been absolutely outstanding at their craft and really can't complain going into the semi-finals.
Yeah, actually, there was... Is that chopping and changing? Is that a good thing because it's a sign of genuine competition and depth within the squad, or is it indecisiveness?
Well, I think I can take that. It's DJ here. I think it's been forced on the Indian team a little bit. We've had a bunch of injuries. We've got the top scorer from our last few ICC tournaments knocked out of the tournament with a broken thumb, although he scored 100 against Australia even with that broken thumb. Shikhar Dhawan's out. Vijay Shankar's got a toe injury with Jasprit Bumrah hitting him with a Yorker. We've got Rishabh Pant who's come in. We've just flown in a replacement opener. So I think a few of these things have been enforced changes. And that has had a knock-on effect and has tinkered with the rest of the lineup. So I think it displays depth in the Indian lineup. So we've got a backup for almost every position, which is great. But it's a little unsettling as an Indian fan in some ways because we've been leading up to this for the last year, right? And we've just been focused on the World Cup, what the combination is going to be, who's going to bat it for, and all of that chat. And it's been thrown off a little bit with the injuries that the Indian players have had. That said, still top of the table, and no one's going to complain when they bring the cup home next weekend.
I think the only thing I'll add to what DJ said is the dynamic would have been completely different if one of the first choice top 5 Indian batsmen could bowl even 3 or 4 overs. And you have Joe Root, who's done it this World Cup, Kane Williamson, even Chris Gale, and across the other teams, you have Shoaib Malik and Hafiz, and there's everybody, and every team has had somebody who could bowl 3 or 4 overs. India is used to that. Sachin used to, Saurav Ganguly used to, Sehwag used to, and we just have Rohit Sharma, Kohli, Dhawan usually, Rahul, and then maybe like a Rishabh Pant or none of these guys can bowl even 3 or 4 overs. And that's where your combination gets really messy because you're forced to play a quote unquote subpar batsman maybe who can bowl a little.
That said, the big revelation for India has been Hardik Pandya's performance in this World Cup. He's bowling his quota of 10 overs, which for the longest time we didn't think would be possible because he didn't look like someone who could get through his full quota, to be completely honest with you. But he's really come on leaps and bounds after he had his coffee with Karan incident and got suspended and investigated for all those comments and things. He's just said, he's switched off everything, it looks like, off field, and he's just said, I'm going to become the best all-rounder he can be. And he's doing it. He's got runs, he's got wickets, and he's brought that balance to the Indian team, which was so sorely lacking in previous campaigns.
We'll go on to sort of predictions for the semi-finals a little later on, but have you got any concerns at the moment for India, or is it destiny awaits?
Yeah, I can take that first. I think sort of 2 concerns. The first is the wrist spin twins. They've been such a force for the Indian side for the last 2 to 3 years. That's Kuldeep Yadav, the left-handed wrist spinner, and Yuzvendra Chahal, the right-handed wrist spinner. And at one time or the other, either or both of them has gotten hit pretty badly this tournament. So we were talking predictions for our playing 11. I don't think both of them will make it, and that's a little bit of an issue. So depending on the pitch, depending on the opposition, etc., they'll choose their side. But I think the first concern is the spin twins. And then the second, as has been the case for the past few years, is over-reliance on the top three. So if Rohit Sharma shows up, makes his 6th World Cup century, then all will be well. If
you mean 7th, right?
One of the,
because he's going to score one in the semis as well.
Yeah, 7th in the final, 6th in the semis. But in the semi first, if Bolton, Ferguson show up to the party, get the top 3 out early, the middle order is incredibly vulnerable. So those are my 2 concerns. DJ, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean it's a good team. It's a very balanced team. They know how to play under pressure. They're always under pressure. I mean it's like. They're always at their own wedding, people taking photos with them, want to get a selfie with them. There's constant scrutiny on the Indian players, and they still manage to come out and perform. So they know how to perform at the big stage. They won ICC tournaments in the past. So I think it's 2 games away from a World Cup, and I see them bringing it home. It'll be tougher against Australia than England, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that later, I'm sure, in the show.
Yeah. So we can't move on without letting the Aussie contingent have the right to reply here, guys. Is it a done deal?
Mena's here, so I think the Indians a done deal. Not at all. They'd be very nervous coming up against the Aussies in the final. That's for sure. Especially after we towed them up in the last World Cup in the semi-final. I have noticed, though, that no one's answered the question about what's our favourite moment of the World Cup and our worst moment so far. So maybe I'll lead off and say my favourite moment was when Australia beat England at Lord's a couple of weeks ago. Hard to go past that, especially because, England were up against it then. So for Australia to win was a huge one. And don't have a worse moment yet, but could come if Australia crashes out in the semi-final.
I was going to say, it's coming for you.
Yeah, it's coming on Thursday, I think, actually, yeah.
I was just going to jump in and say, Manners, my favourite moment, maybe your least favourite, which was India beating Australia in the group stage by 42 runs. That was a nice moment. Dhawan made the century. Stark went for 74 odd runs, which was his most expensive this tournament. And then Australia chasing 352 were 200 for 2. With 16 overs to spare, and then Bumrah and Bhuvaneshwar happened. So that was definitely my favourite moment of the World Cup.
I have a worse moment. This is Paul here.
Yeah, that was game-changing.
Yeah, 2 wickets in an over. That was a great moment.
No, but seriously, guys, I mean, that's a dead rubber. I mean, it's all now the semi-finals and the final. No one's going to remember who beat who in the group stage. So you can hang your hat on that, but it's not really much. It's a bit like the Australia-England game. If Australia loses to England in the semi-final, that game at Lord's will mean nothing.
You just asked what the favourite moment was, having just quoted Australia-England, so I'm just quoting the same.
Yeah.
You did open the box there, Menace.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
But before we go on to semi-finals and who England are going to play in the final, let's do one quiz question, and then we're going to go to Jonathan for his views on England. So that quiz question, open to everybody. Remember, use your name as your buzzer. A lot of chat about how Bumrah has been impressive so far, and he is one of the 2 bowlers who have bowled 8 maidens so far in the World Cup. Who is the other bowler to have bowled 8 maidens in this World Cup?
Paul Wokes.
I think Paul was there first. Paul?
I said Wokes.
No,
Chris
incorrect. Incorrect.
Jonathan, I think that's Jofra Archer.
It's correct. Archer is spot on.
No. Just sound of mortification.
I can already hear Paul typing and just checking that online. Jonathan, he's late to the show, but he's quick off the blocks.
Yeah,
he's already got 1 point. That's Adam and Jonathan on 1 point each. And Jonathan, welcome to the show properly. Now, mate, you're going to tell us a little bit about England. So it's been a bit of a stop-start campaign for them so far. But how are you feeling about them?
Yeah, thank you. And it has. And apologies for joining late. I'm feeling it's a little bit stop-start for me on the podcast as well. But yeah, my game overran and injuries and all the rest of it. So it was a bit of a nightmare. But I'm pleased to be joining everybody now. As for England, yeah, I mean, it's different to all the hype that was built up around it coming in. It feels very different now, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more optimistic again. It's almost been classic England in that it's been quite a roller coaster ride. I think everybody came in with a huge amount of optimism. There was a lot of talk before the start about the the huge batting depth that we have, and then we started to see some fairly classic England collapses, losing wickets after wicket after wicket. But then the return of Jason Roy seems to have, I don't know, it almost brought an air of calm around, and him and Bairstow just seem to be, have stepped up to a next level since he's come back into it, and now there's that level of optimism again. I think for me, we still seem a little bit fragile, and when wickets start falling, we don't seem to be able to adapt. The Australia game in particular was a concern because I thought the David Warner innings in that game was fantastic, and the England batsmen just didn't react to the conditions and the game situation. So that's a concern for me, is that when we are facing adversity, we don't seem to be able to pull it out of the bag and sort of battle our way to wins. However, I think this is certainly the first time in my lifetime is that if England play as they can do, they can beat anybody in this tournament. If England play to their full potential, I think they can beat anybody. And I'm sure that the Indian and Australians in the room are probably going to shout me down at that point. But I'd be confident that if we play to our potential, we can win.
It's all right, mate. We can put them on mute. That's not a problem. So, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things there, actually, about Bairstow and Roy and the importance of them. I mean, the key seems to be, wind up Johnny Bairstow and let him get really angry. And then he spouts off on Twitter and gets pissed off and then comes out and smacks a century. So if we can all please abuse Johnny Bairstow on Twitter, that seems to work. But from the Roy point of view, are England too dependent on Roy?
Yes. Word, I think we are. I think the games that he wasn't there, I mean, if we can stop picking James Vince, that would be fantastic anyway. No offense to the lad, but he's just, that's not, he's not bringing that confidence of the rest of the batting lineup. Joe Root, you must be virtually walking out as soon as, he gets there. So, but yes, I think we are very reliant on Jason Roy, and I hope we're wrapping him up in cotton wool at the moment. And it sort of slightly brings me back to the Alex Hales debate, because I think if Alex Hales had been there and instead of Vince, maybe it wouldn't have been quite so dicey. But
but he was. He was.
So in a word, yes, I think we are extremely reliant on Jason Roy, and there was a lot of talk about how sort of deep England could bat, but actually we do seem to need a platform to be able to do that sort of comprehensively, and Roy and Bairstow are being able to provide that. My concern is when they're coming up against sort of the Starks of the world. If we lose one of them, which will happen at some point, you would think, how are we gonna go on from there, and what toll are we going to be able to put up?
Yeah, I mean, so open question to everybody here. Any thoughts on England's performance so far? Have you been impressed, disappointed, pretty much sort of nonplussed?
Peaking at the right time, England.
Is that your excuse for the semis already, Manos?
No, but I just think you've beat India, you've beat New Zealand. You're going into the semi-finals in good form. England had their little wobble losing to Sri Lanka. So, yeah, I think if I was England, I'd be feeling pretty good. They always talk about getting momentum going at the right time, and it looks like they've turned it around just in time. Hopefully it stops on Thursday.
Don't you think that they're struggling chasing, though? They're struggling in chases. They've 3 games they've lost.
But everybody has. It's just been the whole World Cup.
I was going to say everyone struggled there. The stats, it's really hard. Anything chasing more than 220, 230 seems like a mountain.
Why is that then? Is that because of the pressure? Is that standard at the moment in ODI cricket? Why is chasing become so hard in this World Cup?
Well, the used pitches have been a problem, and the pitch is getting slower and lower as the second innings progresses. Has just meant that chasing has become very difficult. I was very impressed with India chasing so well against Sri Lanka. I was sitting watching it with an Indian, and I said, I think Sri Lanka are going to win this. And he said, no, we'll cruise it in. And I was waiting for collapse, and it demonstrably never occurred. But that seemed to be an exception. Every other game, it's almost been to the point where the World Cup, like if Australia win the toss against England, I'll be confident Australia will win. If England win the toss, I'm almost going to, as Bairstow and Roy start hitting early fours, I'll get into a deep state of depression because I can see 350 coming up and Australia wilting, even though it's not going to be on a used pitch. But it's a bit of a worry that if that's going to be the legacy of the tournament, that you win the toss, you win, it's going to be disappointing.
Particularly since the last few years, a lot of teams have built their strategy around chasing and chasing big totals down and hunting them down. So people like India, Kohli and Rohit have just made a living out of that, right? So it's quite strange for that to have been turned around in the World Cup at this stage. And as you say, it's the pitches being tired. And in the early part of the season, I think there was quite a bit of seam movement, plus pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kohli even said that at the toss in the England game, didn't he? I think he was quietly confident. He said, we love to chase. So I think he was still trying to sort of believe that himself. But as I say, it definitely has shifted. But be interesting to see the next 3 games.
Sorry, mate. He did also come out with one of the great, I think, interviews on that match as well, where he talked about how it was unfair because the boundary was too short.
Did anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we can answer that. I mean, it was strange that it was a 59-meter boundary just when England needed to get some runs. But to be fair, we had 2 spinners which we played in that game, both of whom went for runs, and Bairstow and Roy played out of their skins. And fair game, well played to that.
Yeah, that was my sort of point to that, was you're all on the same field, no?
Right, but it's a different style of play, isn't it? Because Rohit and Kohli aren't people who hit the ball that much in the air, as a Jason Roy, for example, is, and a Josh Butler as well. Probably hit more sixes than Kohli and Rohit, as well as Rahul.
Yeah, and also your ability to hit square of the wicket changes based on pace and spin, right? And so India having 2 spinners just made the ability to hit square of the wicket a little easier. That's how I interpret his point. Probably a little bit of bias in wanting to defend our captain, but that's how I.
Yeah, and noticeably, we dropped one of the spinners in the next game. We played on the same boundary because he didn't think he could defend that boundary with 2 wrist spinners. So he played it quick instead. So selection error, maybe.
Maybe it's sitting something that Kohli and Sharma can work on. There's an area for development for them.
For the
Yeah, 1 and 2 in the world
batsman in the world right now. Are you offering some advice?
Before this descends into absolute carnage, we talked.
We did pretty well to do 38 minutes before you got a bit edgy.
Yeah, but we will push on. There was talk. I think it was maybe Menes was just saying there about England peaking at the right time, which is a nice segue into what a lot of people have been saying about Australia as well, in terms of how they've peaked for the World Cup in general. So Menes and Paul, thoughts on Australia so far? Not getting ahead into the semi-finals yet, but thoughts on Australia so far?
Well, I think they've been amazing compared to where they were. And we lost 5-0 to South Africa a couple of years ago, 5-0 to England. We're losing, games at home. It seemed as though Australia were going to be far too far away. Now Australia has played really well. No matter what happens in the semis, from where they were, they've done really well. If they do happen to win the semi-final and the final, this kind of, I'd call it a myth that Australia can sort of dominate when it really matters, will become absolutely entrenched, and I'll be one of the people leading it. That you can win all the bilateral series you want, but when it really matters, Australia turns up. If we don't win the semi and don't win the final, it's nothing.
Yeah, I agree with
Menes. What about?
Yeah, I agree with Paul on that one. It's just been incredible. A few months ago, I had Australia really struggling to even make the top 4 after the group stage because they've just been so poor. So to turn it around with led by Mitchell Starc with the ball and David Warner with the bat, giving it the big up yours to the rest of the world. So, it's been incredible. Great turnaround. Justin Langer has his own method of motivating the team. And, if you hear them talk, they're always positive and they're always talking sort of corporate speak, but it's working. They're all brainwashed and they're all doing well. So, it's been a great World Cup, much better than I thought maybe 3 months ago.
The biggest concern we've got now is that with Sean Marsh getting injured, it seemed like finally an Australian side would be free of any Marsh brothers, but the universe kicked in and said, no, there must be a Marsh brother in the squad. So Mitchell Marsh likely to come into the side now. I hope he proves me wrong, but I can see his overs leaking runs. I'd much prefer going in with an extra batsman, picking both Handscomb and Wade, and relying on the specialist bowlers to get the job done with some assistance from Maxwell.
Yeah, Paul, I disagree. I think Mitch Marsh is going to hit the winning runs at Lords, and it's going to be just reward for a great career.
I hope you're right.
One one question for Menas and Paul before we open up to everybody else, actually. Have you been listening to any of Michael Clark's commentary?
Fortunately, my mute button works really well, so no.
His commentary, what he says isn't always so bad, but it's just his voice. What they should do is have Stephen Fry voice the words of Michael Clark a couple of seconds later. We get a clean feed with coming through that way. It'll be so much, we'll have so much more gravitas.
just put,
everyone would fall asleep if Fry did it.
Or maybe just put him permanently on subtitles or something like that.
I don't know what part was funnier, them in the final. I don't know, the runs. There's too many things to enjoy there.
So, okay, open discussion to everyone else. I've been saying on our show that I'm getting very worried about how well the Australians have been playing, and I'm quite concerned about how well they're going. Other people's thoughts? Impressed?
I was really surprised. I was really surprised that people were writing Australia off, to be honest. Prior to the tournament, I said they were going to make top four easily, because it was simple. You bring back Dave Warner and Steve Smith, two of the top 5 batsmen in the world. Australia have been laughed at for the last year. It's obvious with Langer in the backroom staff. You create a siege mentality. They're in England of all places. So to me, it was obvious that Australia are going to effectively save up yours to everyone and make it through to the semi-finals. The worry for them now is that they have to play England in the semis, but even then, I'm expecting Australia to beat them in the semi-final.
When you put it like that, McCann, actually, yeah, it's bloody obvious, isn't it? So, actually, quiz question for everybody. Yell out your name if you know the answer. Who is the second top wicket taker so far in the World Cup?
Mashal.
Yes.
Do you know what? I don't know. Mohammed Amir.
Now that is game tactics there. Just yell out.
No, I was going to say Archer, but now I'm saying Mohammed Amir.
Go on, Miguel. You've had time to Google this by now. What's the answer?
I'm going to say Geoffrey Archer.
No. So second best wicket taker in the World Cup,
Jonathan.
And your answer is?
Brahman from Bangladesh.
Yes, correct. He's jumped ahead. Jonathan's jumped ahead into a 2-1 lead over Adam. Now, going trans-Tasman. Adam, tell us a little bit about New Zealand, mate. How they felt like they sort of limped into the semi-finals.
I think that's the fair description. To be honest, I mean, the World Cup started great for us. We had a pretty relatively soft draw when you think about it, getting Afghanistan, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh straight up. No offence to Bangladesh, but we've historically done well against them. We've recently smashed Sri Lanka and Bangladesh at home. So we were confident to win those games. We got the point against India due to rain. That point probably ultimately got us into the semi-finals. And we were confident. We just got through West Indies and South Africa and Bangladesh in 3 close games. And there was an air of confidence sitting at the top of the table. And then we came up against Australia, England and Pakistan. And unfortunately, we've got dusted in all those 3 games. So you're right, we've kind of limped in. All the other teams seem like they've got a little bit of momentum, and we've got absolutely none at the moment. We've got concerns with our opening batsman. And Martin Guptill, who's our star, is struggling at the moment. We can't find a partner for him, let alone him finding form himself. We've relied so much on Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor in this World Cup so far. Trent Bolt with the ball and Lockie Ferguson as well. So we're going into the semi-final against India with all sorts of issues, and we still haven't decided who our best team is either. So, yeah. But you never know, these one-off games, anything can happen, I guess.
I'm starting to regret Australia losing to South Africa even more now.
Well, see, I always think about the law of averages thing there, Manners, and I kind of think that, we are due for a big performance soon, and that Rohit Sharma is due for a failure.
Yeah, you've been due since 1975 and it still hasn't happened. So
we feel we are consistent. We've made another semi-final. We've got there.
Anyway, I'll be cheering on the Kiwis. I hope they knock off those cocky Indians. Yeah, it's 11 v 11. That's normally what they do.
Yeah, and we're actually quite worried about the Kiwis. I know people think that this is the quote-unquote easiest semi-final, but it's not. It's not an easy semi-final. I mean, for every player that India have got, New Zealand have got one that matches them and might even be better. You've got for Kane Williamson, you've got a Kohli. For Bolt, you've got a Bumrah. I mean, they're good matchups on paper, to be honest. And
Ashwin, are you a little bit concerned the fact that the Black Caps have actually been playing so poorly and they're kind of due for a big performance? Are you kind of concerned? So, I mean, we've been so poor for the last 3 games, and you guys have been so dominant. Is there a bit of an air around Indian cricket at the moment that, okay, you've got the easier game on paper, but New Zealand could turn up and shock you guys?
Well, I don't think we've been seeing what New Zealand's been doing as them doing particularly badly. I mean, they had some good games. Pakistan, Babar Azam pulled out a blinder. Against England, the pitch slowed down incredibly. I mean, there was nothing that New Zealand could have done to chase those runs down. So it isn't like New Zealand's been playing badly. They just haven't had the luck of the English, for example, where we'd interview Jason Roy scored behind, and they didn't win enough tosses and things like that. Kane Williamson as well said on in the post match after England, saying there was nothing we could have done. England got the better of the conditions. They played well, and that's it. So I think it'll be a good match. I think India have got the confidence, but as you say, it's one game, right? And it's knockout, so it doesn't matter what you've done in the 9 games before. It matters what you do on the day. And the last time this tournament was played in this format, the team that qualified in 4th place actually won it. So there you go.
Wow. Okay. So before the tournament, I thought it would be an India-England final, and I'm going to keep with my prediction. As hard as it is to admit that, and I really want us to win, and my heart is obviously behind New Zealand. I think India in the end will be too strong. I think they've got a lot of momentum behind them. A scary thing for India is that Virat Kohli still hasn't got a World Cup 100 this time around, and I think he'll be hungry for a big performance. From a New Zealand perspective, I think Trent Boult and Lockie Ferguson will be the key, because if we can get inroads into the Indian top order, as the boys mentioned, there's a bit of a soft underbelly in the Indian middle order. But I think India should prevail.
Yeah, I was going to add, given that it's MS Dhoni's birthday today and we're recording on his birthday, I'm a massive MSD fan, and I'm backing him to star against New Zealand and deliver the goods. Come with the man.
How old is he today? 58? 58?
Or his batting average against Australia. So anyway, I'm counting on the big man to score against New Zealand in the semis. He's come under quite a lot of pressure for his slow strike rate and stuff. So, yeah, going out with a bang. That's how we see it, MSD style.
Yeah, and then Thursday's clash, Australia-England. Menners, Paul, first of all, and then Jonathan. Menners and Paul, how do you think it's going to go? Who should we be looking out for?
Australia's never lost a semi. 7 semi-finals, 7 final appearances. I'm terrified that this is going to break the streak. I think that I just have this feeling that England's going to win, and that it's going to be an England-New Zealand final, and England might win the whole thing.
Paul, I concur with your fear. I mean, it is my greatest nightmare losing a semi-final to England in the World Cup. I mean, there's no coming back from that, apart from winning the Ashes 5-0. But I think that Australia... Aaron Finch will have a huge performance in the semi-final. He's going to make 150 off about 120 balls. Australia will cruise to victory. And, I think it's going to be an Australia-New Zealand repeat of the final. And Australia, David Warner lifting the trophy at Lords with Mitch Marsh holding the other side. It's going to be a great day.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if New Zealand can make amends for the last final. Look, it'd be disappointing for them to lose 2 finals in a row.
Jonathan, come on then, fight the English corner.
Okay, well, I think from the England-Australia game, I think it's going to be super tight. I think whoever wins the toss could well go on to win. I think they are very evenly matched. But in the almost classically English self-depreciating way, I think Australia nick it. And I also think India have got way too much for New Zealand. So I think it's an India-Australia final, as much as that pains me to say. I think Mitchell Marsh is probably not going to be the hero of the day, but with Stark and Cummings and Finch and Warner and Smith, we've got to rely on us bringing our absolute A game. If we do, then it's going to be an incredibly tight game, and we could well nick it. But I just think that we are a little bit fragile. And I think the Australians, as they so often do, they just have a habit of sort of exposing our weaknesses. And I think they're probably going to nick it, as much as that hurts me to say.
Well, I mean, from my side, there's not been a 400 score, and I could see a massive. If England win the toss and get going, I think England can nick it. I think if they struggle early up front, if they bat first, or Finch and Warner get away, I think whoever gets away the best, I think will probably take it home from that. But I've got a feeling that I think that seven in a row streak is going to end. But that's my heart rather than my head, unfortunately.
I think you're probably right. I think to be honest, it might come down to who takes early wickets and who breaks those early partnerships on both sides. I suspect whichever takes the first wicket earliest will probably win that game. Because if we get rid of Finch and Warner, then early on, then I think we can set a big enough total that you won't be able to get. But again, I think if England lose Roy and Bairstow early, then I think we're in trouble.
The one thing we would add from the Indian perspective in all of this is that we wouldn't mind losing to New Zealand, but England and Australia, I mean, whatever. So the Kiwis are nice guys now. They weren't always. So we wouldn't mind losing to them.
So, in summary, we are, as a group, pretty certain that the final will be made up of either Australia, New Zealand, India, or England, or Australia, or New Zealand, or India. All the permutations covered. Everyone being very, very polite about what their predictions are. Before we move on, though, to the final little segment that I want to throw some questions at everybody here, we do have a Pakistani representative joining us. Faizan, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me here?
Mate, we can, and welcome to the pod. And it feels kind of apt, just joining us late, and maybe sharing with us your views on how Pakistan's tournament has gone, and how close you got to making the semi-final discussion.
Yeah, I mean, Pakistan didn't have a really good run over the last 2 years. We lost quite a few games, and nobody expected us to be in a position that we are in now. Like, we had to leave the tournament, but I'm sure whenever people will be talking about this particular World Cup, Pakistan will be a part of that discussion, and some particular individual performances, especially by Babar Azam and Shaheen Shah Afridi, emerging as a fresh talent and someone who became the highlight of this tournament. I mean, there's plenty to take from this tournament. We had some really good games, some good results, but unfortunately, we had to leave at the time when we were, I think, at our best. But that's the way it is, and I wish good luck to all the teams that made to the semis, and I hope there'll be some interesting competitions in the next week.
I was going to say that's far too polite for this podcast. You clearly haven't been listening to the first hour. But Faizan, there was an interesting question that was joked about or raised earlier, and it'd be good to get your thoughts on it as you're kind of at the pointy end of the situation. What are your views on the way in which those sort of the decisions are made when two teams have the same points in net run rate versus head to head?
I think coming into a tournament, I think teams already know the rules, so we have to follow the same rules as any other team. So if it was any other team with lesser net run rate, they would have had to go out. I'd say it's a bit of a obviously sad end to our run in this tournament, but I mean that's the way it is, and it would have been the same for any other team. So I don't think I won't be too negative about it, but I think there could be like a better solution, and there could be a better way of choosing who can go ahead. I mean, Pakistan beats New Zealand in the group stage, and Pakistan obviously won quite a few good games. I mean, they played really well. In the last few 4 or 5 games they played, and I think everybody wanted them to go ahead with the brand of cricket that they were playing, and how electrifying the atmosphere was when Pakistan was playing, and the players were obviously sinking into the atmosphere and producing those explosive results as well.
I mean, I quite like head to head. I think it's better because it's what you played, but I think they should have during the innings break had a super over yesterday's games and just made their way down there and just had one big super over against each other. would have been more entertaining if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're being very diplomatic. I'm going to open
rock,
it up
paper,
to
scissors.
what I'm assuming will be a less diplomatic group. So everyone else, thoughts on net run rate versus head to head, or is there an alternative? Do we have a 1-over decider between two teams?
I don't think there's an easy, straightforward answer to that question. So it would be really hard to choose at this point what would be the best way to choose the fourth team. But yeah, Pakistan, obviously, a lot of people, even those who are not Pakistani supporters, they've been following Pakistan in this tournament and we've been watching the way the Pakistan played, and they fighted back after losing quite a few games at the start of the tournament. And they did want Pakistan to play in the semis, but now that we are out, I mean, we're happy that we were able to produce some good results, and the way boys played in the last few games. I mean, everybody enjoyed the cricket they played, and that's what matters. I mean, it's important for the sport that Pakistan was there. They played really like entertaining cricket for everyone to watch, and yeah, I mean, Pakistan won't be considered as losers after going out, after playing such a good few games and leaving at this stage. But I think every team have got how many more games? You guys be playing 2 more games in the tournament, so it's like the end session. So the only 4 teams got to qualify for the semis. But yeah, it would have been nice if Pakistan was there. But as I said before, the top 4 teams are there. So I hope to watch some good cricket because we are cricket fans. I mean, yes, our team, if it was there, we would be more happy. But I just want to watch some interesting games in the next week. And I hope it's going to be a good competition because we have some good sides there playing cricket now.
Are you going to be backing India, Faizan?
India, I think India is relying on Rohit Sharma a bit too much. I didn't see too many Indian players performing as well as I was expecting them to before the tournament. But yeah, with the way they've been winning all through the tournament, I don't see any reason for not considering India as one of the favourites. Look, every team had their bad days, but India has been, in a way, been a bit fortunate that things worked out good for them in the tournament, and they obviously played really well as well to be where they are now. So, yeah, I mean, fair play to them, and good luck.
A question for everybody here, moving sort of further forward of the World Cup. Like, I know it's hard to believe that this World Cup will actually end, even though it's been going on for God knows how long, but it will actually end. Looking at the summer here in the UK, you've got the Ashes going on. Will the World Cup semi-final have any impact upon the Ashes and the way the two teams end up competing?
I think it possibly depends on the nature of the semi-final and how close it is. I think if it's a really tight, close game, it will be sort of a good warm-up for the Ashes almost. And I think if one side completely dominates, that then could become something of a sort of, I don't know, a sort of mind set that you can get into, and you can sort of try using the mind games there for the Ashes potentially. But if it's as tight as we think, I think it'll be a really enjoyable game. But I don't think it'll necessarily influence how the Ashes will go.
Yeah, I just don't think that it'll have a great impact. Such different forms of the game, there'll be different players, especially for Australia in the Ashes 11. And you know, when it comes to that first Ashes test with the Duke ball in hand, I just think it all starts again. So, yeah, I don't think it'll play a big impact. I think more injuries from the World Cup could have an impact. So, Usman Khawaja is in doubt now. James Anderson's in doubt, although he's not in the World Cup. But, you know, if you have a few players ruled out in the next week, if Archer were to do a hamstring, so those could really affect the Ashes, but not the actual result.
Yeah, I don't think it'll have a massive impact, to be fair. I think if anyone will be affected by it, it'll be if England crash out, in as much as, when I say crash out, because of the hopes before the tournament, then I think it might be tougher to pick it up for them. I think Australia, you know, I don't think it'll have as much impact, and I think they'll reset quicker if they went out. But I don't, as Men has said, I think the format's so different. There's different personnel, so I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. But I think it'll be a bigger loss
in people's minds and English players' minds if they do go out.
I think if Johnny Bairstow gets very angry at the way the semi-final goes, then he will step up and score 500 runs in the first test of the Ashes. So I think we'll be fine on that point.
The angriest man in cricket. So, look, guys, it's been a fantastic hour. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. I hope there is still somebody listening out there in podcast land. But before we wrap up, finally, I want a prediction from everybody for who they think is going to win the tournament overall, and who is going to be lifting that trophy. And as we go through your answers, please try and answer this quiz question. So you're each going to get a shot. You're going to give me the name of who you think is going to win the final, and then you need to tell me in kilograms how heavy do you think the World Cup trophy is. And then we will wrap up and say goodbye to the patient listeners. So, Mikel, let's start with you. Who do you think is going to be winning on the 14th?
You stopped me just as I was trying to Google the World Cup trophy kilogram answer. But okay, so the winners of this World Cup. Did you say the semi-finals or just the winner outright?
Just the winner. Just the winner. We're only interested in winners here.
Okay, the winner outright will be India. And although I know we're not discussing it, but maybe the people who follow me will want to comment on it, I do think, however, there is a bigger discussion to be had after the World Cup about how the format telegraphed what was going to happen. And we spent a long time getting to this point when everyone knew what was going to happen in the semi-finals or who was going to get there.
It's a very interesting point. And you've probably bought yourself enough time to have Googled that answer. But how many kilograms is the World Cup trophy?
I didn't Google it. Oh, God. 6.
6 kilograms. Gareth?
Outright winner is... I'm going to go with my heart just for comedy value, because I always do. I'm going to go for England as the outright winner. And they'll be lifting that cool 9 kilogram trophy. I have no idea. What it is.
9 kilogram trophy. And if anyone has been following Gareth's predictions on All About the Balls, they will know that this definitely means England will not win.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, Jonathan.
DJ, who's going to take it?
It's going to be India, and it's going to be 10 kilograms, and Kohli is going to do a thruster with it at Lord's.
and the members of the MCC will look on in disgust. Ashwin, how about yourself?
I think Ashwin may have left. I think he's just on mute, but I suspect his answer is going to be the same.
Yeah. A 10 kilo Kohli thruster. Fantastic. Paul, how about yourself? Who's going to take it overall?
England, sadly. And I will guess, just to be lacking in the spirit of the tournament, I'll say 11, so that I'll give my Indian friends the least chance of winning it.
Hashtag elite honesty there.
That is. Hashtag strategic. Brilliant. And then, Menners, how about yourself?
Don't say 12, Menners.
Yeah, well, no, I'm going to tip the Aussies to win their 6th World Cup, and I'm going to say the trophy is 4.1 kilos.
4.1. That's.
Have you been sandpapering it? At least one sandpaper. At least one sandpaper.
We lasted
one sandpaper
an hour and 10 minutes. An hour and 10 minutes without any DIY jokes. Impressive.
We'll just do. I was going to bring that up in the Ashes megapod, but that's fine.
Yeah. Who hasn't had a go yet? Jonathan, you still here? No, I think we've lost him. Faizan, how about yourself?
I would say Australia, and the trophy, I think it would weigh about 8 kg maybe, because nobody said 8, so I'll just say 8.
8 kg. I would tell you, I mean, Mena's answer of 4.1 is so specific, it makes you think he knows exactly what he's talking about.
I think you've got Adam on as well. Does Adam have had a go yet?
Adam, yes, Adam.
I think a Kiwi will get their hands on the World Cup trophy. Unfortunately, Ben Stokes from England.
Ben Stokes.
So, I mean, we have won something, haven't we? You know, we get a hand on the trophy. But, yeah, I think England, definitely. And World Cup trophy weight, I'm going to go 7.3.
7.3. Some strategic betting there. And Jonathan, you're back?
I am back, yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right, mate. So who do you think is going to be lifting the trophy, and how heavy is that trophy?
I think that India will be winning it, so I think Kohli and Dhoni will be lifting that together. And how heavy is it? What are we wanting in?
Kilos, please, mate. Kilos.
New money, please.
I don't know. 11.3.
11.3. Well, okay, so
I've got 300 grand window that I can win it in.
Suck it, Paul.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we have not a single vote for New Zealand, but then roughly split equally between England, Australia, and India. So it looks like it's going to be a very exciting next week or so. Before we wrap up, the winner there is Paul, who got it spot on with 11 kilos. Very impressive.
Why did I add that 0.3?
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was bizarre, but it will come back to haunt you. It will come back to haunt you. But guys, look.
Being an Australian, because we've got 5, you get to hold it at school and you get to feel it each year, so you kind of get to know.
I think we're all regretting the lack of sandpaper jokes now, aren't we?
Well, actually, the trophy was 11.3 until we got hold of it.
Sandpaper again.
Well played.
Well done, man.
Guys, look, let's wrap it up. I think we could talk for hours, but I think some people have got to get to sleep and some people have got to get to work. So let me just say a huge thank you to absolutely everybody for getting involved. I don't know about you personally, I've really, really enjoyed it, and I would love to try and do this again, which again sounds like a 3 a.m. booty call. But on behalf of everybody, thank you very much indeed for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be tweeting a lot about this. So get involved with any comments and questions, and we can follow up. And if you did enjoy this, let us know, because we can do another one. So everybody, say goodbye and thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, bye.
Janice, what do you think couples did before TV was invented?
I don't know, go for walks on the beach, long drives, fancy dinners, have more sex maybe?
But what did we do when we decided to move in together? We debated between the Chromecast and the Fire Stick.
We gave up on sleeping early so we could stay up watching true crime shows.
We got ourselves 3 cat babies.
And basically became the cutest couch potatoes around.
Okay then.
In case you guys still haven't got it, we are a TV crazy, Netflix loving, binge watching Mr. and Mrs.
I'm Anirudh Kuha.
I'm Janice Sequeira.
And if like us, you snort TV for breakfast, lunch and dinner, this is the podcast for you.
Tune in every Thursday on the IVM podcast app or wherever it is that you get your podcast from. This is
Mr.
and Mrs.
Binge Watch.
Look! Up in the internet! It's a meme! No! It's a cat video! No! It's the Geek Fruit Podcast!
That's right. We interrupt this riveting broadcast to tell you about our show, The Geek Fruit Podcast, where Tejas, Dinkar, and I, Jishnu, talk about everything in pop culture, including DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Netflix, and everything in between.
You know how your friends hate it when you ramble about some nerdy crap and you just want somebody to listen to you? Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that, but come listen to us ramble and it'll almost be like the real thing. Kind of.
Listen to new episodes of the Geek Fruit Podcast every Monday and the Geek Fruit Bulletin every Thursday on iTunes, Google Podcasts, the IVM app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy listening, you nerds.